When we think about what creates a serial killer, our minds usually go to psychology, right? A troubled past, a broken mind. But what if one of the most violent periods in American history wasn't just about that? What if it was fueled by something else entirely? Something invisible, hiding in plain sight, in the air people breathed and in the ground beneath their feet? Today, we're going to unpack a pretty shocking theory that connects industrial pollution to an explosion of extreme violence.
So let's start with the central mystery, the big question. Why the Pacific Northwest? Why, all of a sudden in the 1970s, did this beautiful, kind of serene part of the country become a hotspot, a hunting ground for some of the most infamous murderers we've ever seen? It's a question that honestly has stumped people for decades.
All right, so a serial killer hotspot. This phenomenon was so concentrated that the whole region got this dark, grim reputation. The author Caroline Fraser, who actually grew up there, talks about this constant low-level fear. Women were just disappearing from their college dorms, from crowded public beaches in the middle of the day. It was terrifying.
And the scale of this is it's staggering. We're talking about Ted Bundy, who kicked off his spree in '74, taking about one woman a month. Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, he was prowling the exact same areas. And get this to give you an idea of how dense this was. In that single year, 1974, there were at least six known serial killers actively hunting along one single stretch of highway near Seattle. I mean, that's not normal, not even close. Okay, so the arsenic clue. The first hint that the answer might not be in a police file or a psychology textbook came from a real estate ad. It's wild. Years after leaving, Caroline Fraser was thinking about moving back home, just browsing property listings online, and she saw this really bizarre warning. So she's looking at this piece of land out on Vashon Island, a beautiful, woodsy, seemingly pristine place. And right there in the ad, it says, arsenic remediation may be necessary. Now think about that. Why would a gorgeous rural island have so much arsenic in its soil that you'd need to call in a hazmat team to clean it up? That single question was the thread that unraveled this whole thing. And a little digging quickly pointed to the culprit, a smelter. Now, for anyone who's not familiar, a smelter is basically a gigantic industrial furnace. You shovel in tons of rock, ore, and you melt it down at insane temperatures to pull out valuable metals like copper or lead. The problem is, that process also pumps out tons and tons of nasty pollutants, including things like arsenic and lead dust all over the surrounding environment. And this is the moment it all clicks into place. The arsenic pollution on that island came from a huge smelter in Tacoma, run by a company called Asarco. And guess where Ted Bundy and Gary Ridgway grew up? Tacoma. Right there, in the shadow of this plant, breathing in its fallout day after day during their most critical years of development.
So let's connect the dots here. We're moving from a geographical coincidence to hard science. A link on a map is one thing, but is there a real scientific connection? Can breathing in industrial pollution actually make a person violent? Well, the answer seems to lie in one very specific heavy metal: lead. Lead is a powerful neurotoxin. It's poison, plain and simple. And what makes it so incredibly dangerous, especially to kids, is that it can cross the blood-brain barrier. It gets inside the developing brain and just wrecks the place. And the damage it does isn't temporary, it's permanent. It literally changes the physical structure of the brain.
Now, this is what's so fascinating. Look at what lead attacks. It's not random. It goes right for the parts of the brain that are in charge of impulse control, rational decision-making, learning, regulating your mood. Basically all the things that keep us civilized. And the result? You see it right here. Heightened aggression, crazy impulsivity, poor judgment, a lower IQ. It's like it eats away at the very neurological foundation of self-control. Which brings us right to the core question of this whole explainer. When you look at someone like Ted Bundy, who really baffled the experts because he didn't fit the typical profile, he didn't have that classic history of horrible abuse, could this have been the missing factor? Could lead exposure have been the final push on top of whatever else was going on in his head, tipping him over the edge from just troubled to truly monstrous? But here's the thing. This wasn't just a problem in Tacoma. That smelter was like a ground zero, but for decades, America was basically running a massive, nationwide experiment with this same exact poison, pumping it into the air of every single city and town through our cars. This timeline is it's incredible to look at. Leaded gas gets rolled out in the 1920s, even though doctors were screaming about the health risks from day one. But it really takes off in the 50s and 60s when everyone starts buying cars. Lead pollution just skyrockets. So think about it. The kids who were breathing all that in during the peak years, when do they grow up and hit their peak crime-committing years? The 1970s. It lines up perfectly. So why? Why use a known poison in gasoline when safer alternatives, like ethanol, already existed and worked just fine? The answer is as simple as it is infuriating. Profit. You see, you couldn't get a patent on ethanol, but you could get a patent on the lead additive. So, corporations like Standard Oil and DuPont made a choice. They chose the poison because they could own it, control it, and make a whole lot more money.
And the result of that choice, that nationwide experiment, is right here on this chart. It's one of the most compelling and, frankly, chilling correlations you will ever see. An economist named Rick Nevin put this together. Look at it. As lead exposure goes up, the violent crime rate goes up. As lead exposure goes down, violent crime plummets. The lines are almost perfect mirrors of each other, just offset by about 20 years. It's staggering.
To really understand the human cost of a number on a chart, let's zoom in on one of the most extreme examples there is. A story out of Kellogg, Idaho, that just shows how calculated and cold the decision to pollute really was. So picture this scene. It's almost too wild to believe. You have an elementary school filled with kids located literally right across the street from a massive lead smelter. The pollution was so constant that teachers would see the smoke and think the plant was on fire, but nope, that was just a normal Tuesday. And then, in 1973, it gets so much worse. A fire takes out the main filter on the smokestack, the one thing keeping the worst of the lead dust contained. And the company, they did the math. They literally did a cost-benefit analysis and figured out it would be cheaper to just keep running without the filter and pay off any potential lawsuits than it would be to shut down and fix it. So for over a year, they knowingly, deliberately showered that town and those kids with pure, unfiltered lead. When doctors finally tested the children, their blood lead levels were 10 times what the CDC considered the danger level. This quote from someone who was a kid at that school, it just says everything. The river that flowed by the school was a light glowing green color, sort of a glow like a glow stick. It's this haunting image of a landscape so poisoned it doesn't even look natural anymore. It's literally glowing. So look, the good news is we eventually did something about this. Banning leaded gas was one of the single greatest public health victories of the 20th century. But the story doesn't end there, because when you unleash a poison like this, it leaves behind a long, stubborn legacy. And the results of the ban were nothing short of dramatic. The so-called golden age of serial killers pretty much came to a screeching halt. This chart just shows how steeply the numbers of these kinds of violent offenders fell off a cliff after we got the lead out of our gasoline. It is maybe the strongest piece of evidence for the lead violence connection. But here's the catch. Lead doesn't just go away. It doesn't break down or biodegrade. All that poison that came out of the smokestacks and the tailpipes, it's settled into the soil. And it's still there. It's sitting at the bottom of lakes and rivers. It's in the front yards of old houses in places like Tacoma. And trying to clean it up is an almost impossible, mind-bogglingly expensive task that we're still dealing with today. So I think the crucial takeaway is this. The story of lead proves that an invisible environmental toxin can have a profound, massive impact on society, on behavior, on violence. And it leaves us with a really critical question for right now. We dealt with the lead, but what are the invisible poisons we're all living with today? What forces are shaping us and our world that we can't even see yet?